Welcome, my friends. Pull up a chair. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine a stadium. Can you hear the roar of the crowd? Can you feel the grass under your feet? Today we are going to talk about a game that millions of people love. Some call it soccer. Most call it football. But where did this magic start? How did a simple ball change the world? Let's take a walk back in time together. Long ago, before there were stadiums, people still loved to play. Imagine the world thousands of years ago. There were no phones, there was no internet, but there was always a ball. In ancient China, soldiers played a game called cuju. They kicked a leather ball into a small net. It was a way to stay strong and fast. It was a game of skill. In Greece and Rome, people played with balls too. They used their feet and their hands. Far across the ocean, in Central America, the Maya people played a famous ball game. For them, the game was part of their religion. Isn't it amazing? People who lived so far apart all had the same idea. They all wanted to kick something. They all wanted to run. They all wanted to play together. These ancient games were like the first whispers of a story. They were the seeds of what we see today. They show us that humans have always loved to compete. We have always loved to move. The ball was a simple toy, but it brought people together. It didn't matter if you were a soldier or a farmer. When the ball was at your feet, you were a player. So we see that football didn't just appear one day. It grew slowly, like a tree. It started with a simple kick in the dirt. It started with a laugh and a goal. And as the years turned into centuries, the game began to change. It moved from the ancient courts to the open fields of Europe. Imagine a small village in England, hundreds of years ago. It is a holiday. The sun is shining. The whole town is outside. But they are not just sitting. They are running. This was mob football. There were no real rules. There was no limit on players. Sometimes, two whole villages played against each other. The goal was often a landmark, like a church or a large tree. The ball was made of leather, or even a pig's bladder. It was loud. It was messy. It was wild. People ran through the streets. They jumped over fences. They splashed through rivers. Sometimes the game lasted all day. It was a time for the community to be together. It was a chance to forget about hard work for a while. But it was also dangerous. People got hurt. Windows were broken. Kings and queens sometimes tried to ban the game. They thought it was too violent. They wanted men to practice archery instead of kicking a ball. But the people didn't stop. They loved the game too much. They loved the feeling of the chase. They loved the spirit of the team. Even without a referee, they understood the game. It was about heart. It was about energy. This was not the organized sport we see on TV today. But the passion was the same. The joy of scoring was the same. The mob was the heartbeat of the game. And soon, this wild energy would find a new home. It would move from the messy streets into the quiet gardens of schools. Now, imagine a very different place. We are in the 1800s. We are at a private school in England. Young men are wearing uniforms. Everything is very strict. But during their break time, they want to play. They take the old mob football and bring it to their school fields. However, every school has its own way of playing. At rugby school, students are allowed to pick up the ball. They run with it in their hands. At Eton College, they prefer to use only their feet. Imagine the confusion. If a student from Eton played against a student from rugby, they would argue. "You can't touch the ball," one would yell. "Yes, I can," the other would shout. The game needed a plan. It needed a common language. Teachers liked the game because it taught the boys character. It taught them to be brave. It taught them to work together. But it was hard to have a real competition if the rules were different everywhere. The schools started to talk to each other. They wanted to find a middle ground. They wanted a game that everyone could enjoy in the same way. This was a very important time. The game was becoming more formal. It was moving away from the chaos of the village streets. It was becoming a sport for students and gentlemen. But it was still missing one big thing. It needed a single set of rules for everyone in the world. And that moment was coming very soon. It is a cold evening in October, 1863. We are in London, at a place called the Freemasons' Tavern. A group of men are sitting around a table. They are leaders of different football clubs. They are here to make a big decision. We need one set of rules, they say. They talk for hours. They argue about many things. The biggest argument is about the hands. Should players be allowed to carry the ball? Or should they only use their feet? Some people leave the meeting because they want to use their hands. They go on to create the sport of rugby. But the others stay. They decide that the feet are most important. They form the Football Association, or the FA. This was the official birth of modern football. They wrote down the rules in a little book. No more tripping. No more carrying the ball. Suddenly, the game had a structure. It had a soul. The word association gave us a new name for the sport. In England, people started calling it assoc. Later, that became the word soccer. Now teams could play against each other fairly. The first competitions began. The FA Cup started in 1871. It was the oldest trophy in the world. Fans began to come and watch. They cheered for their favorite teams. The rules made the game beautiful. They made it a dance of skill and speed. The game was no longer a secret kept in English schools. It was ready to fly. It was ready to see the world. Imagine a big steamship in the late 1800s. It is sailing from England to South America. On the ship are British sailors and workers. In their bags, they have a ball. When the ship stops in a port like Buenos Aires or Rio de Janeiro, the men go to the beach. They start to play. Local people watch them. "What is this game?" they ask. The sailors teach them. They show them how to dribble. They show them how to score. Soon, the local people are playing too, and they are very good at it. The same thing happens in Europe. British students go to Switzerland or Germany. They bring the rules with them. They start the first clubs. British engineers go to Africa and Asia to build railroads. In their free time, they play football. The game was so simple. You didn't need expensive equipment. You just needed a ball and some space. It didn't matter what language you spoke. Everyone understood a goal. Football was like a traveler. It followed the trade routes. It followed the maps. In every country, the game changed a little bit. In Brazil, it became like a dance. In Italy, it became very tactical. But the heart of the game stayed the same. By the start of the 1900s, football was growing everywhere. It was no longer just an English game. It belonged to the world. And as it grew, it became more than just a hobby. It became a job. It became a dream. For a long time, football was played for fun. Players had other jobs. They were doctors, or they worked in factories. But the game was getting very popular. Thousands of people wanted to watch. Clubs started to charge money for tickets. The clubs realized they needed the best players to win. And the best players needed time to practice. They couldn't work in a factory all day. In 1885, England decided to allow professional players. This meant players could finally get paid to play football. Can you imagine how exciting that was? To play the game you love as your job? Small clubs became famous organizations. They built big stadiums with high walls and wooden seats. In 1888, the Football League was formed. It was the first league in the world. Teams played against each other every week. Fans followed them everywhere. They wore their team colors, they sang songs. The local club became part of a person's identity. If you lived in Liverpool, you supported Liverpool. If you lived in Madrid, you supported Real Madrid. Football became a way for people to feel proud of their city. The game was now a business, but it still had its magic. The players were heroes. The matches were like plays in a theater. The world was ready for something even bigger. The clubs were great, but what about the nations? What if the best players from every country played against each other? In 1904, a group of men from different European countries met in Paris. They wanted to create a global organization for football. They called it FIFA. At first, it was very small, but they had a big dream. They wanted a world tournament, a World Cup. A man named Jules Rimet was the leader of this dream. He believed that football could bring peace to the world. The first World Cup happened in 1930, but where should it be? They chose Uruguay in South America. Uruguay was the best team at the time. They had won the Olympics. Many European teams did not want to go. It was a long journey by boat. It took 2 weeks to cross the ocean. But finally, 13 teams arrived. The atmosphere was incredible. The people of Uruguay were so proud. In the final, Uruguay played against Argentina. The stadium was packed. People were standing on the roofs of houses to see. Uruguay won 4-2. They were the first world champions. The dream had come true. Even though the world was facing hard times, the World Cup was a light. It showed that people from different continents could meet and play fairly. It wasn't just a game anymore. It was the world's game. But then a dark shadow fell over the world. A big war started. Football had to wait. After World War II, the world wanted to heal. People wanted to find joy again, and they found it in football. The 1950s and 60s were a golden age. Television started to show matches. Now, people could watch the game from their living rooms. They saw new heroes. Have you heard of Pelé, a young boy from Brazil who became a king? He was only 17 when he played in his first World Cup. He played with so much joy. People also saw the total football of the Netherlands. They saw the skill of Diego Maradona from Argentina. These players were like artists. The field was their canvas. The game was expanding. More teams from Africa and Asia started to join FIFA. New tournaments were created, like the European Championship. The stadiums got bigger. The lights got brighter. But it wasn't just about the stars. It was about the memories. Do you remember a goal that made you jump out of your seat? Do you remember a save that made you hold your breath? Football became a shared history for humanity. It became a story we all tell together. In every corner of the world, children put on the jerseys of their idols. They practiced in the streets, dreaming of the World Cup. The game was no longer just a sport. It was a legacy. It was a gift passed down from fathers to daughters, and from mothers to sons. So, here we are today. Look around. Football is everywhere. It is in the favelas of Brazil. It is in the parks of New York. It is on the dirt fields of Nigeria and the modern stadiums of Tokyo. Today, billions of people watch the World Cup. It is the most popular event on the planet. Why do we love it so much? Perhaps because it is a language that needs no words. When a team scores, everyone screams the same way. When a team loses, everyone feels the same sadness. Football teaches us about life. It teaches us that we can fall down, but we must get up. It teaches us that one person can be great, but a team can be unstoppable. The beautiful game has come a long way from the ancient soldiers of China. It has traveled from the muddy fields of England to the global stage. It has survived wars and changes in technology. But at its heart, it is still the same. It is still about a ball, a goal, and a dream. In the future, the game will continue to change. There will be new rules and new stars. But the feeling of the game will never die. It will always be there to unite us. It will always be there to remind us that we are all part of the same team. So, next time you see a ball, remember the history. Remember the sailors, the students, and the kings. And remember that you are now part of the story too. Thank you for walking through history with me tonight. The fire is getting low, but the game is just beginning. Sleep well, my friends, and may your dreams be full of goals.